stopped taking part in the fun, extra office activities after I didn't agree with how my boss handled the situation. Am I the asshole? I know some background is important here, so apologies in advance. This is a bit long. First, my actual job performance has never been an issue. I consistently meet every required metric 100% of the time, and I've done that for nearly 10 years. Sure, there might have been the occasional off month due to unavoidable travel or circumstances outside my control, but nothing serious or ongoing. On top of that, I've regularly stepped in to help carry the workload when coworkers ran into personal issues or unexpected problems, just to make sure our department didn't suffer or get flagged for performance concerns. I have strong relationships with our clients, I've never had a formal complaint filed against me, and overall, my professional record is solid. You get the picture. Beyond my core responsibilities, I've also always been the person who handles the extra things around the office. I organize and decorate for holidays, coordinate gifts for office celebrations, bake desserts, write formal thank you notes on behalf of our department, and even put together holiday baskets to help maintain good relationships with the outside agencies we work with. None of that is technically part of my job. I did it because I wanted to contribute to a positive work environment. A couple of months ago, there was a policy change that affected all of us, and to be honest, no one was thrilled about it. Still, I accepted that it was out of our control and adapted as quickly as possible. My coworkers did the same, but they reached out to me to vent and talk it through. That's always been normal for our team. Usually, we let ourselves have one good venting session, get everything off our chests, and then move on with a, well, it is what it is attitude. After that, everyone buckles down, works hard, and doesn't keep dwelling on it. Here's where things went sideways. While one of my coworkers was venting to me on the phone, my boss happened to overhear part of the conversation. However, he could only hear my side of it, not the full context of what was being said. From what he heard, it probably sounded like I was complaining, but in reality, I was doing the opposite as well. I was empathizing with my coworker, but I was also pointing out that the change wouldn't be as bad as it seemed, that it was technically covered in our contract, and that there were ways we could make it less frustrating and even somewhat manageable. After we hung up, I didn't think much of it. Nothing we said was extreme, disrespectful, or out of line. It was exactly the kind of mild frustration you'd expect employees to express when a sudden change is announced. Honestly, it was very tame. I didn't think about the situation again until a few days later, when my boss suddenly called me into his office for an employee evaluation, apparently in direct response to what he overheard. In every performance review I've had at this job, I've consistently received exceeds expectations in nearly every category. This time, he dropped every single one down to meets expectations, across the board. Then he lectured me about my so-called attitude, saying that I should have cut my coworker off instead of letting them vent. According to him, I should have told them to call him directly instead. He accused me of being negative, even going as far as saying I was becoming a negative influence on the team, and warned that if he didn't address it now, it could supposedly grow into a toxic work environment. That didn't sit well with me, and honestly, it still doesn't. Coworkers should be allowed to talk to each other and let off some steam without it being treated like a disciplinary issue. After that meeting, you can guess what happened next. I no longer felt motivated to continue taking the lead on all the extra things I'd been doing to make the office environment more enjoyable. I started keeping my door closed whenever he was around. I didn't bring dessert for the March birthday lunch. That lunch isn't mandatory, but I didn't want to create more issues. So I still attended, just sat there quietly and didn't engage. More recently, there's been another appreciation week coming up for one of the departments we work with. An email chain started about organizing cards and gifts. I replied with the amount of money I was willing to contribute and asked who I should send it to. That email chain has now gone in circles for days. People are clearly noticing that I'm no longer stepping in to organize everything, and I'm not changing course. One coworker even approached me about it directly, and I simply told them that I don't have the time to take on those responsibilities right now. At this point, I can't help but feel like all the effort I put in over the years to foster a positive, supportive workplace either didn't matter or was never truly appreciated. It feels like it all got erased because I listened to a coworker and showed a little empathy, and then got harshly reprimanded for it. It makes me wonder what the point is of going above and beyond for a decade if it can all be dismissed so easily. So now I'm questioning myself. Am I wrong for quietly stepping back from all these extra voluntary responsibilities because of how this was handled? Or am I just being overly petty? Update number 1. No exact date. Same post. I hope I'm updating this correctly. A lot of people asked for an update, so I waited a bit after some actual movement and developments before posting again. Recently, there was an event that normally requires someone to take the lead on things like organizing a card, collecting money for a gift, and coordinating staff involvement. Several weeks in advance, I informed both my team and my boss that this event was coming up and that I would not be available to handle it. Despite that, nothing was done until the day before the event. That's when one of my coworkers called me and asked if I could take care of all the planning and coordination after all. I declined and explained that I genuinely did not have the time, which was and still is true. A few days later, my higher-ups pulled me aside and confronted me about what they described as my pulling away from the team. They leaned heavily on phrases like teamwork makes the dream work and cited this specific event as proof that I was disengaging. They also brought up that I'd been on my phone during what they referred to as unofficial but expected fun time, using that as further evidence that I was distancing myself. I explained that I had given everyone, including my boss, weeks of advance notice that I wouldn't be available to lead that event. I also pointed out that I'm still actively helping the team with tasks directly related to our actual work responsibilities. But with my current caseload, I simply don't have the capacity to take on social planning or event coordination on top of everything else. As for the so-called mandatory fun time, I reminded them that I often don't get proper lunch breaks due to community meetings that are scheduled during those hours. On those days, I'm required to adjust my schedule and leave early to compensate. Losing what could be a proper break on days when I don't have to do that has been contributing to burnout. The conversation dragged on for about 30 minutes, with them repeatedly trying to persuade me to reconsider. I stayed consistent and calmly reiterated that, given my current workload, I don't have time to dedicate to non-essential tasks. Eventually, they acknowledged that I'm allowed to prioritize my breaks. Ironically, I've been so busy lately that I haven't been able to attend the community meetings as much anyway. Realistically, that may be another responsibility I end up scaling back from in the long run. Overall, the tone of the conversation made it seem like they were worried I might be considering leaving. There was even a comment made to that effect. I clarified that I'm not planning to leave, but that I am taking time to reassess and restructure my priorities now that my caseload has increased. Update number 2. Same post, approximately 2 months after the original. The annual performance review has come in, and unfortunately, it's just as discouraging as the earlier one that followed the incident with my boss. I declined to sign the evaluation without further discussion and immediately contacted my union. From my perspective, this feels like punitive retaliation rather than an honest assessment of my work. My performance quality has remained consistent, and there has been no documented decline in my actual output or results. If management is unable to clearly justify these lowered ratings despite my continued performance, I've decided that continuing to go above and beyond no longer makes sense. At that point, putting extra effort into anything beyond my core job duties would feel like chasing a moving target, one that I can't realistically meet no matter how much I give. Final comment, nearly 4 months after update number 2. After reviewing everything, the union advised me that, technically speaking, the evaluation is considered valid. Management followed the letter of the established parameters, and my boss stated that because I meet my deadlines and quotas, the ratings fall within policy. With that clarity, I made a decision. I've shifted fully into what people often call quiet quitting. I now do exactly what is required to meet expectations. Nothing less, but also nothing extra. This ensures my raises aren't negatively affected, while protecting my time and energy. I've called in sick on several days that coincided with non-mandatory but clearly expected social activities. I've stopped participating in community outreach, so I'm no longer losing my breaks. For the first time in a long while, my schedule actually belongs to me. My coworkers are aware that what happened was retaliatory and unfair, and they've been supportive. Since then, additional changes have taken place that directly impact management. There's even been talk that my boss may be looking for a position with a shorter commute. I already know that if that happens, I'll likely be encouraged to apply for their role. And when that conversation comes up, all I plan to do is laugh. Did I do something wrong, or is my neighbor overreacting? First, I want to apologize in advance if I say anything incorrect. I'm only 20 years old, I'm not Jewish, and I honestly don't know much about the customs. I'm not trying to be disrespectful at all. I genuinely want to handle this the right way. And if this kind of post isn't allowed, I understand. I recently moved into a new neighborhood where many of the families are Jewish, including my next-door neighbor, Yankee. From what I can tell, his family seems very observant. For example, one time they asked me to turn on their stove for them because it was a Saturday. They also observe all the holidays and dress very conservatively, which I fully respect. Yesterday, my sister-in-law and I were outside in our backyard playing with my son. We were listening to music while we played. It was during the daytime, and the volume wasn't excessive or anything like that. Still, since our houses are close together, I assume the neighbors could probably hear it. Today, Yankee came over and spoke to my husband about it. He said that playing that music was disrespectful because he doesn't listen to female singers. To my knowledge, the music wasn't inappropriate or explicit, just normal pop songs. I checked with my uncle, who owns the house. He's retired and moved elsewhere, long story. He told me he's never heard of this being an issue before, and there's no HOA or neighborhood rule about music like that. I also tried Googling the situation to understand better, but honestly, I just ended up more confused. At this point, I'm not sure what I'm expected to do. Can I simply ignore this request? I don't plan on being loud or inconsiderate, but it feels unreasonable to constantly monitor or change the music every time we're outside. At the same time, I truly don't want to offend anyone or be disrespectful of their beliefs. So, did I do something wrong here? Or is my neighbor overreacting? Thank you in advance. Update post. Thank you for your advice. November 19th, 3 days later. Thank you so much to everyone who took the time to give advice about my neighbor situation. I'm really relieved to know that I wasn't being disrespectful by playing my music. Just to clarify one thing again, the music truly was not loud. My husband was inside our house and couldn't hear it at all. You could only hear it if you were standing in the yard right next to ours. That said, I had just moved into the area and absolutely didn't want to start off by making enemies with my neighbors. So, after reading all of your responses, I decided to talk to Yankee directly. I'm actually really proud of myself for doing this because I'm pretty shy by nature. Your comments gave me so much confidence. If I hadn't asked for advice, I honestly probably would have stopped listening to music outside altogether. I went over and explained things calmly. I thanked him for letting us know his concerns and told him that if our music was ever too loud, he was welcome to let us know and we would turn it down. However, I also explained that I wasn't going to censor what I listened to in my own backyard. I reassured him that I wouldn't play anything inappropriate, especially since I have a preschool-aged child, and that I'd try to be extra mindful on Saturdays. At the same time, Saturdays are also our days off, and that's when we relax and enjoy being outside. He seemed to accept that and said it was fine. About an hour or so later, something unexpected happened. His mom, who had been nearby when I spoke with him, came over to talk to me herself. She told me very clearly not to change anything I was doing. She said they were happy to have young families in the neighborhood and that I didn't need to worry. She also told me, very bluntly, that she would handle the situation on their end. I felt a little awkward after that, but honestly, it was also reassuring to know that I hadn't been upsetting the entire household without realizing it. So, overall, things seem to be settled, and I'm really grateful for all the advice and encouragement. Thank you all again.